So the other day we discussed a lot about 3D Mario and how there's an impact from the movie and it can potentially change the games, as Miyamoto described that he doesn't want to feel sort of captured with his creations and sticking to the video game lore because it changes a lot. So what exactly does this mean for the Legend of Zelda series? We know that Miyamoto is involved in some way with the Legend of Zelda movie, so does this mean that that lore is also going to change? So let's get straight into it. Now honestly, I don't think that this is necessarily a great thing, because really when it comes to think about it, the Legend of Zelda series is probably the series that Nintendo, the best series with the best lore in any Nintendo game. It definitely brings a lot of things to the table when you really come to think about it. But now with the Legend of Zelda movie, if they're going to directly sort of impact the games from what they've said, the lore in the movie, this could definitely change a whole lot of things. Now currently with the timeline, it starts off with Skyward Sword and it makes its way down to essentially Tears of the Kingdom. Now honestly, this is a pretty good timeline because it definitely explains a lot of things. The era of the child, the era of the Link dies in Ocarina of Time, the era of the adult Link, and all of these things branch off into different timelines, but eventually they sort of reconnect in some way. But now, if this is going to be different in the movie, how exactly is this going to be? So let's just say that the Legend of Zelda movie doesn't start off with Skyward Sword, because right now it seems like it's going to be mostly Ocarina of Time and potentially Twilight Princess. So if this is directly going to happen, the lore as we know it could definitely change in a lot of ways. Maybe the goddesses didn't even create the land. Maybe the Triforce is just a relic from ancient past and it's not in fact from the goddess Hylia, or in fact the three goddesses that sort of created all of the lands. So potentially that right there could definitely change. What if Link just starts talking randomly inside of the movie? When then that could definitely change the timeline and can change everything going forward from that movie. So the next Legend of Zelda game, instead of Link being a quiet soul, he could just very well be talking. And I'm not very sure if this is definitely a great thing. Although we did see a post from Miyamoto himself that he's like it might ruin the sort of Link, the mysterious about Link talking in the movie. So I guess it's definitely really interesting. Maybe he changes his mind, and what if Link just starts talking and then there you go. Who knows? It's definitely a really interesting thing. Now, I honestly believe that the Legend of Zelda timeline as we know it right now is essentially a complete timeline. The timeline is complete with Tears of the Kingdom. Because if you look at it, you can really say that potentially they're going to go to a separate timeline and this doesn't affect anything. The lore is not going to change from the movie to the video games, because The Legend of Zelda is the one that really changes them. But then if you look at 3D Mario, the reason why the lore changes is because there's going to be spoilers right here for the Super Mario movie. 3, 2, 1. Is because Peach and Rosalina are in fact sisters, which is definitely really interesting and is not something that was part of the games. So it seems like that moving forward is going to be that timeline for the Super Mario Galaxy movie or for the next 3D Mario game. So Peach and Rosalina are always going to be sisters. So let's just say that the Legend of Zelda, the reincarnation theory isn't a thing, but instead every single Legend of Zelda game are connected directly. Honestly, I just don't find this to be the greatest thing. Unless the Legend of Zelda movie, it just ends up being a dream, like the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening or something like that. Overall, it's definitely really weird, and it makes you wonder what exactly is going to be changing. Because if they're going to change the timeline, if they're either going to change the timeline or make a separate alternate reality, things are going to have to change if Miyamoto wants to keep sort of the attention with the Legend of Zelda in the movie, which I find to be a whole situation, a whole mess, that probably why he's never a good person, a good fit for like a good story. Because if you know the Legend of Zelda, he isn't the one working behind it. He's not like directly involved with sort of the scenes. So maybe the movie is going to have no effect whatsoever, and we're going to continue having our beautiful Legend of Zelda games how they officially are. So potentially that could be it. Potentially this just doesn't happen whatsoever. Because it seems like the Legend of Zelda movie, there's going to be a lot of traveling, and it definitely could be something like Breath of the Wild. And we know from leaks and rumors, the next Legend of Zelda game, not counting Ocarina of Time remake or whatever case may be, is going to be another open world game, but in a fresh Hyrule and a fresh dimension. So instead of just Hyrule Castle, Death Mountain, we're also going to have a lake, and we're going to have a whole bunch of things that we've already known from past Hyrule. It seems like it's just going to be an open world that is going to be like different. If you look at something like Wind Waker, if you look at something like Twilight Princess, they have different iterations of Hyrule, and potentially this is what's going to be happening. So yeah, I definitely think that this could be a good thing. This could be a not so good thing. Because honestly, I'm probably going to go with the mindset and the idea that the Legend of Zelda movie is just going to go off to a separate timeline. Which isn't the first time, because if you remember, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity tried to do the same thing. But instead of directly messing sort of with the timeline and what exactly happened here, they went back in time, completely back in time, and made sort of an alternate timeline for this entire game to unfold. This is exactly how the Legend of Zelda movie could do. Maybe all of a sudden something starts to unfold and boom, you go back in time. Potentially that could be it, but it definitely wouldn't make sense, really. I don't think it would make sense to just start a movie off and say, hey, by the way, we're going back in time. We got the Ocarina of Time, and we're going straight back to the past. That doesn't really make sense to me. So maybe at the end of the movie or a post-credit scene, they can reveal that it's going to be all sort of a backwards hoops through reality. Overall, I'm kind of excited and wondering what in the world is going to be happening for the Legend of Zelda movie. This movie could potentially explain a lot of things, like how the world was created, the goddesses, the Triforce, and everything associated to that the games can't explain because, well, it's a video game where they just didn't lean into that idea. Right now, we know a bit about the Triforce, but every single video game, we never really touch the Triforce. You only really touch the Triforce at the end of A Link Between Worlds, and potentially, if you count Breath of the Wild, because Zelda holds the Triforce, there's maybe a couple other games, but the point is, it's not really super deep into the story, a nice juicy steak of story. So, potentially that's what the movie's going to lean into, or they're just going to completely change up the entire story. Maybe the Triforce is just, like I said, a relic that you find deep in the basement or something, and all of a sudden, boom. It's a Triforce of immense power. So honestly, you don't really know what's going to be happening. I just hope that it doesn't change up the story. So instead, Miyamoto's like, hey, look at this. We got some story here. The Legend of Zelda games created some great stories, some great power, and then now we can just recreate the games, what they told me, into the movie format. Overall, I find this to be really interesting. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that the Legend of Zelda movie is going to change a lot of things for the video games or not? Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Consider hitting the like button, maybe subscribing if you're new. We do a bunch of different Nintendo content on this channel. Anyways, thank you so much. Hope you have a fantastic day. See you in the next one.